Welcome back, everyone, to Stock Market Weekly, the show that breaks down the most important trends, price action, noteworthy moves across financial markets. I'm your host, Evan Medeiros. Let's get into the top takeaways. Fed really stole the show this week with Wednesday's FOMC minutes and then the press conference following. Jerome Powell basically giving the green light to this market rally this week with hinting that 3 rate cuts are still on the table this year. Of course, the Fed is going to remain data dependent. Things can change, but the market liked it enough to really sort of just freeze in its tracks, find support, and then off to the races to new highs made this week. Nasdaq 100 had been dancing on that open technical gap from a few weeks ago where the market gapped up and then we were sort of consolidating right above it. It looked like last Friday that we're about to roll right back in and kind of roll over a couple of percent. Did not happen, found support, squeezed up, and the Nasdaq uptrend continues. We had Reddit debuting their trading this week. So this is the highly anticipated sort of lead off, kind of one of the bigger companies, right? 5, 6, 7, $8 billion market cap that could fuel a lot of these other big private companies to come public later this year. We have commodities that are continuing to see some strong momentum. We looked at the DBA charts last week. We're going to drill down into that again this week, but not for Bitcoin. Bitcoin saw 4 days of consecutive outflows, probably 5 days. We just don't have Friday's flows data out yet at the time of recording this. Most of those outflows coming from the GBTC trust that converted to an ETF along with everything else back on Jan 10. So lots to talk about in this week's video. Stick around, charts coming right now. All right, we've got some charts in front of us. TC2000, that is the platform we're using throughout this video. We do support TC2000 here at the Trade Risk. So if you are a user and you need anything built, custom stock scans, layouts, watch list columns, whatever you're trying to do, reach out to us. Let us know if we can help you get a little bit more out of this platform with our custom scans and custom code. You can learn more at thetraderisk.com. Now, let's get into the numbers here. 1 week returns green across the board. Nasdaq 100 biggest winner this week, up 3%, but everything else not too shabby. Take a look at our volatility indices, both of those coming down this week. You can see Nasdaq vol around 17 and S&P VIX here at 13.07. If we take a look here at the sectors on the week, you can see again mostly green on the downside, just real estate stubbornly red, down 1%, also negative, only 2 sectors negative over the past 1 month. That's real estate and healthcare. Healthcare was, again, coincidentally, one of the underperformers this week on a relative basis, basically flat, along with consumer staples. The best performing sector this week, though, was communication services, followed by discretionary and industrials. Let's take a look here at sector trends. So this is one of the custom smart trend filter indicators that we've built out, basically measures price and volume spanning across time, helps us smooth out the noise and understand sort of the path of least resistance using price and volume objectively. And really, most things kind of staying the same. We had a couple of transitions. So you can see XLY moving back into that bullish state here on Friday. We did see biotech cool off this week. So in the lower screen here, you can see IBB going red then yellow. Same thing with healthcare this week. So a little bit of weakening there in the healthcare biotech space. But generally speaking, most of these other trends continue to stay neutral to positive. Now that brings us to market breadth. And if we take a look here at 52-week highs and lows, we see a nice refresh, encouraging resurgence of the number of stocks hitting 52-week highs this week across the NYSE. Last week, right, we were looking at this dry spell of stocks hitting 52-week highs, and we noted that, and we said, look, we're going to need to be paying attention here to see if we actually get now more of an uptick in the stocks hitting 52-week lows. That did not happen. That did not occur. In fact, we got the exact opposite, or really we got trend continuation of what we've been seeing under the hood, which is more stocks dominating the 52-week highs list than there are stocks dominating the 52-week lows list. That continues to be now an encouraging sign. A little bit of a pause last week. It got us to take a step back and just, brace for some type of turbulence, but that did not manifest, did not find follow through. Again, Jerome Powell to the rescue. Now, if we take a look here at IBD's top 10 list, so the IBD publishes a top 50 list every week. We're curating the top 10 here. We're looking at their top 10 stocks. They are a sponsor of the show, so shout out to IBD. Thanks for making the show possible. You can support us, support them with a link in the description of this video. Get yourself access to their IBD 50 list. You can see a pretty mixed week here. Really, GCT, this has been one of their top performing stocks here on the list. It's been relentlessly in a strong uptrend until this week, until following their earnings announcement. It was down 37% this week, but everything else you can see doing pretty decent here, posting some high single-digit gains. Check out that link in the description of this video for more. And if we round out here to our commodity screen, you can see this is DBA here back at the top of the list. This is that commodity momentum that we're continuing to see over the past 1 month now. You can see that DBA is up 9%, which is a pretty big move. This is not, a tech stock or even, an industrial stock. This is a lot more boring, sort of price sensitive, commodities that have real pricing consequences here for the economy. And as we think about inflation and all of the impacts here, we're starting to see now in real time commodities move up, which again down the line will start to show up in that inflation data. I'm not going to put on an economist hat just on that alone, but it's notable certainly to pay attention to some of this price movement here in the commodity space. Dollar index was also up sharply this week. Gold and oil also up this week. Down the list here, negative. Natural gas still can't catch a bid. Silver was down, copper was down, and Bitcoin down 7.5%. Let's take a look at Treasury yields. You can see mostly positive reaction here in terms of bond prices. So yields coming down, rolling back over. Remember, we had pressure last week. We saw some stubborn, sticky kind of higher yields that just felt like they wanted to ratchet up a little bit. Now they're kind of giving up a lot of those gains that they had last week. So interesting kind of, sideways range, a little bit of turbulence, volatility here. The move index is down this week, sub 100. So, or sub almost going sub 90 almost. So it is nice to see kind of a breakdown in Treasury yield volatility. Maybe that means that we can see continued rollover next week. All right, so that rounds out the data. Let's get into some charts here. S&P 500 weekly time frame. Take a look at this beauty. 2 weeks going sideways. So remember, last week we started our analysis right in here, looking at these two very suspect, sort of ominous looking weekly bars, where our first suspect was this doji here, where we tried to rally up, we tried to sell off, we ultimately closed the week exactly where we started. Then we followed it up last week with an inside week, which just basically built in more pressure into this market, which said that we want to be on alert, we want to be looking for a potential trend change or volatility expansion. The scene was set. We had the Fed out this week as that potential catalyst. These were all things we talked about last week, and lo and behold, when we look at the action now, we see an expansion in volatility, but it's coming to the upside. We get a nice clean weekly breakout after 3 weeks of sideways through time. Volume was light, but new all-time weekly closing highs. Really can't throw too many stones at this, and it's closing up around 5,200. If we go down to a daily time frame, we clean up some of this mess I just drew. You can see again, we got this sideways range over here, right, for about that 2 weeks that we were just looking at on the weekly time frame. And now you can see that breakout occurring on Wednesday on Fed Day, and then a little bit of follow through Thursday and a little bit of digestion on Friday. So technically, when we look here at the S&P 500, it's hard not to like this. The same song and dance, is really continuing in this market. There's not a tremendous amount of urgency or momentum or fervor behind this move per se, but it's that old saying of it's just just really tough to want to short a dull market, right? Or whatever the true quote is that I just butchered. And so right now, again, technically we've got breakouts, we've got all-time highs. The catalyst of the Fed is behind us. The catalyst of the Fed at our backs is perhaps here. And so we don't want to be complacent, right? Things can change on a dime. We want to have a rules-based approach to measure and manage risk. That's why we do these videos every Friday. But for now, when we look at this chart, when we look at this action, you have to be pretty darn constructive. Go to the Russell. Let's go to the Qs next. Nasdaq 100 again. Look at this gap fill here that still hasn't happened. And we talked about it right in here. This was last Friday's video. We started to roll over high volume into this gap. I mean, if I were a short-term technical trader, putting on my hat from years ago when I was really going after the more aggressive, day trading, swing trading action, I would have absolutely been shorting this market here on Friday. And lo and behold, we just did not get that follow through. We got that squeeze up. I would have certainly been squeezed here, and we did not move back into this gap. And again, we get this same song and dance where it's just very sluggish. It's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and the market though continues to grind and continues to fail to find follow through selling on these down moves. So this consolidation, little slower than the S&P, right? Take a look at the S&P where we got more of a clear kind of breakout, a launch above the prior consolidation. Nasdaq 100 is still a little more sluggish here, but still it's just tough technically to find too much fault right now, except for the fact that momentum is a little weak. Russell 2000 once again moving back up this week as well, getting back up to the highs from 2 weeks ago. Didn't quite make a breakout, rolled over a little bit more convincingly here on Friday, but still, as we talked about in last week's video, as long as the Russell 2000 can stay over 190 and it can consolidate in this broader range here, this from a longer term perspective could still stay very constructive. We could still see that resurgence and rotation into small cap stocks. Like we mentioned last week, though, sort of downgraded our immediate outperformance of small caps. I think it just needs a little more time, and we're seeing that play itself out. So that is the big picture. Let's move on to some other individual or some of the other macro movers here. DBA. So this is the agriculture ETF. Take a look at this weekly chart. We talked about it last week. It had a 5% move, and then it had a follow through week of 2% up. Heavy volume coming in. Take a look at this chart here. Now, this is an ETF that's tracking a lot of the underlying futures commodities. So these are things like live cattle and coffee and wheat and corn and soybeans and all of these things I can't easily pull up right now in this platform. But if you were to look at some of the price advances there, you're just seeing a lot of under the hood strength here. And this is continuing, in fact, accelerating this week. So tough chase, of course, at these levels. It's up 9% in the last month. So you'll have to, stock your trade at this point, but certainly seeing lots of continued momentum. I did jump the gun a little bit. Let's go to VIX real quick, which I wanted to start off on. And you can see VIX back down to 13. It was down to 1.5 today, like we talked about at the top of the show. It's kind of settling back into the lows, towards the lows of the year right now. Very complacent kind of sweet spot around this 13 zone. So let's see how long it can stay here. Let's see how long this complacency lasts. Right now, we've got S&P pretty much back up to those highs like we talked about. So this makes sense that we saw an unwind and some fear coming out, protection coming out after the Fed catalyst in that move to the upside. Let's go to Bitcoin next. If we take a look here at Bitcoin, like we talked about at the top of the show, we did see 4 straight days of outflows from the ETFs. And so the ETFs right now are driving a lot of the action here on the margin for Bitcoin. Again, when you think about the underlying, the spot Bitcoin commodity, let's call it, we do have lots of Bitcoin that is basically off exchanges. It's in vaults, it's secured, it's not moving. So prices are really set here on the margin, and ETFs are kind of the marginal buyer and seller right now, and their flows are important to this market, and we did get those outflows continuing this week in GBTC. So we continue to be in this consolidation, this pullback. We're about 17%. We got to about 17% from its highs. I think 20% corrections here in Bitcoin are kind of par for the course. They're not really raising eyebrows until we start getting deeper than 25 or 30%. It's a higher volatility asset. If it's your first time kind of, having exposure to Bitcoin, that's something that I think you'll need to, just adjust your parameters for, let's call it, when you're looking at this. So right now, in a pretty, normal correction, I would say it's had a heck of a move to the upside. So let's see if it can continue to settle in here. Still looks like it needs plenty of time to just at least move sideways between, call it 60 and the highs here around 73 seems perfectly reasonable for the next couple of weeks. We do still have our long position in it. So we do have a way to risk manage and participate in Bitcoin. It's called our Galahad trading system. So if you are interested in trading Bitcoin, check out what we have to potentially aid you in your quest. Now, let's continue here with oil real quick, and then we'll get into some individual stocks. So if we go back here, we take a look at oil, you can see a little bit of a kind of a topping tail here, giving a little bit of pause. Oil's been on the rise here very slowly, still managed to finish up 0.5% this week, but pulling off of its highs. Still in a, it's in this uptrend, undoubtedly. It's just not having a lot of oomph behind it, so it doesn't have a lot of excitement behind it. But on the daily chart, you can certainly see that it's kind of pulling back, flagging, and technically putting in a nice series of higher lows and higher highs here. So, congrats to those that are participating in this move. Continues to work right now. Now, back to Bitcoin. One thing I did want to touch on here is the Bitcoin price was down this week, but what was interesting is a lot of the Bitcoin miners. So the biggest is probably Marathon Digital, ticker symbol MARA, was up 8% this week. Now, the correlation here has been well, it's perhaps weakened up a little bit over the past, rolling period or so, but 8% up is a pretty strong move up in the opposite direction of Bitcoin. Now, Mara had certainly been selling off pretty aggressively. You can go right down the list to like RIOT as well, which was down slightly this week. CleanSpark, was up 12% this week, continues to act one of the best. So it was interesting to see some of the divergence there as miners. From my experience tracking this for some time now, they typically lead the kind of turning points. They tend to be more sensitive to what Bitcoin is about to do. We'll see if that continues to hold up here, but miners had a pretty decent week. Now let's take a look here at some of the IPO stocks. So we've got this custom layout we built out in TC2000. This is available on our website. So if any of you folks that like to trade IPOs or track IPOs, this screen here, anything that has a check mark is basically something in this case that has IPO'd within the last month. So this is showing you recent listings. And you can see Reddit here, RDDT is the ticker symbol, started trading on Thursday. We've got 2 days of price action here. Looks like it's about an $8 billion market cap and really hasn't done anything. It's just been moving sideways here, kind of rolled over a bit into the end of the week. So we're still kind of waiting to see how this really shakes up here. But this was, again, one of the larger private companies that I think Wall Street's been waiting for to finally get public. And hopefully it opens up the door to more companies in the future. If we take a look at some of these other stocks, so there's plenty of names on here. So LENZ, I'll run through this list real quick just for general interest here. If you like trading IPOs, I have no idea what most of these, pretty much all these companies do. Lotus Technologies IPO'd about a month ago. VHAI, Vocodia Holdings, SMXT, Industrial, CRML, Ride, Fufu, LGCL, JFSA, AUNA, a new one just went this week. So you can see that, we've got a decent amount of stocks here as I tab through all of these that have IPO'd in the past month or so. But this layout is a good way to track that and just stay on top of it. So that's our IPO discussion there. I want to talk about what else do I have for us. I wanted to look at a few of the strongest names this week. So if we go to our other layout we have on our website, it's our strongest and weakest layout. If we look at the 5-day strongest sector, that's technology. And then if we look at the 5-day sub-industry, that brings us to internet, content, and information. This was the strongest industry this week within the strongest sector. And then we take a look at the 5-day sorted strongest stocks. We've got a lot of familiar names in this space this week. So first off is Zillow. Zillow got hammered last week, so it's just really a rebound week, but it did it on heavy volume this week. It was up 7.6%. Google in the second spot here. Google, a little bit of a sleeper, right? Everyone wrote this company off as being left behind from the AI race, and suddenly now in the last couple of weeks, we've got this, potential partnership going on here with Apple, and we have just a little bit of perhaps better than expected expectations, or really just positioning here. So Google up 7% this week. I do have a position here in Google. I do have a position in those Bitcoin miners. I do have a position in a handful of things we talked about in this video. So Google continues to work here. Match up nicely this week as well, up almost 6.5%. You can see 10-cent Music was up. We had Meta up leading the charge as well this week, 5%, new weekly closing high. DoorDash also continuing to see nice upward momentum here. Spotify, right, also seeing nice momentum, big trend that has developed here. Yelp, TWLO, Snap. So this is the sector, this is the sub-industry here that was really performing strongly this week. So something to pay attention to. You can see it on this big watch list down here. I'll drag all these names on the list here. It's a fairly tight sector, or sub-industry, I should say, of 28 stocks, but that was leading the charge this week. So I think that is basically everything I had to talk about today. Life looks good again for the bulls. Remember, don't stay complacent. You need to have an exit plan, a risk management plan. So know your levels and know when you're going to get out of your trades. That's it for me. Let me know what I missed in the comment section below. What are you looking at? Any other data that you think is important? Love to read it in the comment section below. Thanks as always for tuning in. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. And have yourself a great weekend. We'll see you back here next Friday. Take care.